Malcolm, I believe that you have argued and warned that China and Australia could be on the brink of a clash within the decade. What can be done to mitigate that risk?
Well, that warning obviously is in the context of a Chinese move against Taiwan. I think everyone is quite rightly concerned about China's intentions and the ability of the People's Liberation Army to be able to undertake a military offensive against Taiwan in the second half of this decade. And obviously, Australia, as a key US ally, could not sit back and ignore that, particularly if the US decides to intervene. And you mentioned President Biden's statement in your lead-in. He's making it very clear that whilst strategic ambiguity remains the official policy of the United States, it is almost certain that in an actual situation where China has intervened against Taiwan, that the US would respond militarily. So I think Australia, would then come to the United States assistance, as would Japan. And I think that that's where we need to be focusing on is obviously deterring that Chinese attack on Taiwan in the first place, making it the costs unacceptable for China to undertake that sort of aggression.
Talking about the costs being unacceptable to China, do you think that the Ukraine war, Malcolm, has made it less likely that China might make a move on Taiwan, given that China has been watching very closely how many in the international community have frozen Russia out?
I don't think so, in the sense that Ukraine is not Taiwan geographically. It's a very different operational environment. It's obviously a maritime domain. I think the Chinese have watched what the Russians have done in Ukraine and learned a great deal on how not to carry out an invasion. So they're not going to repeat the same mistakes the Russians have made in Ukraine. And secondly, I would argue that in terms of the international opposition to Russia in Ukraine, that's not likely to be replicated against China in regards to Taiwan situation. Essentially, you might see certainly Japan, Australia, the United States and others work together, but I'm a little less certain that the ASEAN states would come in on that as well. So the ASEAN states in Southeast Asia, certainly some European powers are less likely to support any coalition against China in a Taiwan scenario.